Hey, how's it going, guys? Mr. Boss for the win here, and in today's Red Dead Redemption 2 video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to create a good-looking character, both for the male and female. Now, the reason this is important is for two things. Number one, it's super easy to create a goofy, like crackhead-looking character. I mean, there are just some options that can really make your character look like they've gone off the deep end. And number two, you only get one bite at the apple here. There's no way to readjust the way your character looks without deleting it and starting over. So you want to make sure you get this right the first time and spend a lot of time correcting everything. Now, before we do jump into this and before we get this started, it is important to note that looks are completely subjective. So what I do in this video should really just serve as a template and a guide. Feel free to make any changes you want to alter the appearance, to alter the looks. At the end of the day, it's about what makes you happy. And that's most important. But I am going to be going over some tips and some tricks. So the first couple things to note is when you load into a new game, you're going to start a sort of a little cutscene. And during that cutscene, it will actually allow you to choose a character, male and female. Now, don't worry if you start building a male character and you want to create a female character. You can always back out and do that again. You're not locked into that choice. So for starters, we are going to begin with a male character. Now, you get taken into this other room where you have sort of a chalkboard and a height thing behind you. You have to enter your name. I just entered mine. And then from there, you can start editing your appearance. Now, the first option you're going to come across is the head. And the head is going to be sort of the foundation upon which you build everything else. Now, for the males, there was 15 different options. Now, there's a couple things to note about the various head options. These, like I said, will sort of give you a template for the shape and the design, and each one is going to be slightly different. And also, each head is going to determine what type of skin tone you can apply. Some heads will only have lighter skin tones, some heads will only have darker skin tones. So that's something you're going to want to keep in mind while you're ultimately choosing one. Now, for me, the one I ended up deciding on was head number 12. Now, I was creating a character that had a little bit of a lighter skin tone, but this one was nice because it also had sort of a darker option if you wanted to do that too. So I went with head number 12. That's the one that worked perfectly for me. Now, from there, you need to choose your age. Now, I'd say if you're going for a good-looking character, you want to make this character as young as possible. Right now, there are no benefits or there's no bonuses for creating a young or old character. Like, for example, an older character is not wiser and a younger character doesn't have better stamina. So you're not going to get any bonuses for that. And I've noticed that blemishes and markings that would make for a less attractive face are more prevalent the older you get. So I would say make it as young as possible. The youngest age is 18 and the oldest age seems to be 60. So I made a character that was 18 years old, and that seems to give you the youngest, freshest looking face. Now from there, you need to decide your body build. And again, this is all subjective based off of your personal preferences, but I noticed that for at least the guys, the athletic build sort of gave me the best look. Now again, if you want to go for a little bit of a bulkier, heavy set, you totally can. But again, I went for that athletic look and it turned out really, really well. Now, I should also point this out, as you guys can clearly see, if you want to zoom in on your character, you can. If you want to rotate the character, you can. And that makes it pretty easy to sort of check out more of the specifics of your character. Now, from there, we need to move on to eyes and brows. Now, some of them look really ridiculous, as I've said. For me, the most normal looking one is neutral. So under eyes, this is the first thing in which you can go under and edit some of the other categories. So you can change the different eyebrows, you can alter the brow shape, depth, eye color, eye redness, eye socket, and eye position. So for eyebrow, I went for something very normal. For me, this ended up being eyebrow number 16. It was just a very normal look, nothing too crazy, nothing interesting. For the brow shape, I also kept it as normal as possible. I didn't want to do anything there. Brow depth, I also kept incredibly normal. I didn't know what that did, so I kept it right in the middle. Eye color, this is obviously subjective. You can change it to whatever you want. Eye redness, I would recommend making this all the way to the left at white, because if not, it's going to look like you're bloodshot, like you haven't slept in days. So I did that all the way to the white. That's going to give you the cleanest look. And then eye socket and eye position, you can adjust if you want, but I kept them exactly normal. I didn't want them to get too inward, outward, upward, or down. So that's the eyes. After that, you have nose. Now, for the nose, I typically think that a thinner nose probably looks a little bit better here, because even at the thinnest, it's still a very normal nose, I would say. So for nose size, I ended up keeping this right in the middle. I felt that that was pretty good for the guy. And then for nose shape, I wanted to make this a little bit shorter. So I ended up making it a little bit shorter. And for the nose tip, I didn't change anything other than making it a little bit more narrow. So I just narrowed it up just a little bit because, again, it's still a pretty normal looking nose. Now, after that, we need to move on to mouth and lips. So for this, there's a couple of different options. You can do smoocher, low, high. For this, I just did it neutral. I wanted to keep it, again, as normal looking as possible. For the final mouth position, I made it a little bit narrower. It seemed to be kind of wide at the start, so I went with that. And as far as the mouth position goes, I ended up moving that slightly upwards, just so it was a little bit closer to the nose. Now, as far as the upper lip shape goes, again, I made that a little bit more narrow and thicker, and same with the lower lip shape, just ever so slightly. And then as far as lip depth goes, I ended up making it slightly more shallow. I just felt like that gave it a little bit more of a natural look. From there, we move on to jaw and chin. So everyone wants to have that, super chiseled chin. And for the guys, that's what we ended up going with today. We ended up going with narrow. We didn't want it to be like super wide and flat. So for the jaw shape, I ended up going a little bit more narrower and a little bit lower. So kind of in that, one quadrant down and to the left. For the jaw depth, I wasn't quite too sure what that one did, so I kept it right in the middle. Chin shape, you can tilt higher or lower, wider or narrower. I went lower and more narrow, again, to give it that more like chiseled triangle look. And then you've got depth, which I ended up keeping normal. And that gave me a pretty nice chin. Now from there, you've got ears. Now, this is pretty easy. You don't want to make them, there's literally an option that's goofy. You don't want to select that. For my ears, I went with neutral, and I ended up making them slightly more shorter, and then I ended up making them slightly smaller. So that gave me a pretty good normal looking ear right there. From there, we've got cheeks. Now, the cheek that I ended up going with here was sunken. I was going for more of like a triangle shape, so that ended up working really well. From there, I ended up narrowing it just slightly. And I also made it a little bit lower. And then cheek depth, you can adjust if you want, but I actually kept that right in the center. Now, teeth. Teeth is important because there's not many great ones. The best option, in my opinion, is the gilded. That is like a full mouth of teeth, you could say. And that right there gives you the option to at least have a full mouth of teeth. So that's what I went with. And then you've got hair options. Again, this is where it kind of gets subjective based off of your style. But the one that I really liked the most was the long right parted. Sort of gave me that like cowboy look, and I really liked that. And then as far as the beard goes, again, this is all to your personal preference. I went with the woodsman. I felt like that gave me a nice little touch as well. Now, after that, you have to update your lifestyle options. Now, for a lot of this, I'm actually going to recommend you completely remove or you turn all the way down to faint, because this is going to be your scars. It's going to be your, sort of skin burns or whatever you want to call it on your face. So for skin modeling, I actually did number 1, and I turned it actually all the way down. And then for both complexions, I ended up turning to none. Well, the first complexion I did none, and then complexion number 2, I did number 4, and I actually turned it down to like its lowest possible. I just barely wanted anything on there. For freckles, I ended up removing. Moles, I've got none. Spots, none. And then scars, none. And that right there should give you a pretty clean looking face. And as you guys can see, that right there is essentially my final product, sort of like a clean, good looking character, and one that I think is ready for the Wild West. Now, there's a couple of other things you can do as well. You can actually change your style of whistle. There's 5 different styles that you can actually do. You can adjust the pitch and the clarity, and then you can adjust your attributes too, where you can give yourselves 2 extra bars of either Deadeye, Stamina, or Health. So that right there is the male characters. Now let's move on to the female characters. So it's going to be very similar, the process we're going through today, with some slight altercations. So again, you enter your name, and then you choose your head design. Now for this, I actually went back and altered the head of the female after I was done, which is something you might not have known you can do. You can actually go back and change the head you want. So don't feel like it's a final call once you start making other changes. So for me, the head that I ended up going with was head number 10. And I actually changed this at the end because I feel like I found a little bit of a better option. So same thing after that, you're going to pick your skin color, you're going to pick your age. I recommend the youngest. Now for the body build of the females, I was torn between athletic and skinny. I went for the skinnier build. It had slightly smaller shoulders and it was more the look I was going for. So I ended up going with that. Again, you can change it to whatever you want. For eyes and brows, we ended up going with neutral once again. And for the female, I ended up going with eyebrow number 1. I felt like they were a little bit more feminine. That's what I went with. For brow shape, I ended up keeping normal. Same with brow depth. I ended up keeping normal as well. Eye color, again, you can change to whatever you want. Eye redness, I recommend going all the way to white. From there, we need to go to nose. Now, for the female nose, I wanted to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more daintier. So I ended up going with thin nose. Now, for nose size, I ended up making it more narrow. For the shape, I ended up making it much shorter. And for the nose tip, I ended up making it right in the center, sort of a smaller, daintier nose. Now for mouth and lips, same thing. I ended up going with neutral. And from there, I just made some very simple adjustments. I made the mouth a little bit more narrow, position a little bit more up. This time I made the lips a little bit more thicker because you've got the lipstick on there. So that's obviously going to be a little bit more predominant. And lip depths I put just in the center. Now for jaws and chin, I ended up going with weak. I didn't necessarily want that like super chiseled look, but I still wanted to be sort of like a sharp, pointy look. So I ended up going with weak, and I feel like that worked really well. For jaw shape, I ended up going with high and narrow, shortening it up a little bit. For the depth, I ended up putting it a little bit more shallow. For the chin shape, we ended up moving that to high and narrow as well. And chin depth, we did a little bit deeper. Now, for the ears, after moving on to that, I wanted to make the tiniest possible ears. So we ended up going with small right here. And then we ended up making some small adjustments, making them a little bit shorter and a little bit smaller. Again, we were going for that daintier of look. After that, it was time for the cheeks. We went for the sunken option once again, which I really like. I ended up going for a narrow shape and then a deeper depth. I don't really know what that did, but I ended up going for it. After that, we've got teeth. Again, you want to go with gilded. That's going to give you the most full mouthful. And then from there, you obviously select your hair and your color. This really doesn't matter. You can choose whatever you want. The one I ended up liking the most was the full curly ponytail. I liked it because some of the hair went over her right shoulder, so it looked good from the back and it looked good from the front. And I ended up just going with a regular blonde color. I really don't know. Now, after that, we have more lifestyle options. Same thing here, skin modeling. I ended up going with the first one because I felt like that gave us the least amount of blemishes. And then for complexion, on this one, I ended up going with no complexion on both. Now, for this one, I did end up leaving some freckles on there. Freckles number 6. We took away the moles, we took away the spots, and we have no scars. Now, after that, the one difference between the guys and the girls is the girls have the option of makeup. And as a guy that has never done any makeup in his life, this is slightly difficult to figure out. I don't know how you ladies do it every day, or if you don't do it every day, whenever you do it, but this is complex. I didn't know what worked well here. So I tried to just go with something simple, not too over the top, but still have like a little bit on there. So that's the design that I was kind of going for. If any ladies are watching this, maybe you can judge me on my look. I'm not too sure. And I just noticed that something was kind of off a little bit after I had completed it. So I ended up changing the head to head number 11. So you can go back and you can modify some things. And I felt like the head number 11 gave me a much better look. So that's just my personal opinion, but that's the girl that I designed right there. And same thing, you can design the whistle and the attributes just like you can with the guy. So anyways, that right there is my guide on how to make a good-looking male and female character in Red Dead Online. If you guys have any other tips or tricks on how to make a good-looking character, please be sure to let us know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys down there. If you did go on to enjoy this video, though, a like rating would, of course, be awesome. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are new or you like daily Red Dead Redemption 2 videos like this. With all the way, guys, like I said, thanks so much for watching. Take care. And I'll see you guys in the next video.